Welcome back, students. I'm Dr. Suresh. Last time, we got that Class 1 cavity prepped perfectly. Today, we're going to finish the job. We're going to bring that tooth right back to life by mastering the art of the amalgam restoration.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with the end in mind. What does a perfect restoration even look like? Then we'll walk through the essential steps, prepare and pack, the real art of carving, and then the final finishing touches. And we'll wrap up with something super important, how to avoid the common mistakes that can trip you up on exams and, way more importantly, in real life with a patient.
All right, first things first, before you even think about mixing any amalgam, you need to have a crystal clear vision of what we're trying to achieve. What's our end goal here? So you remember that perfect cavity preparation from our last session, right? Well, our job now is to fill it. But we're not just plugging a hole. We are aiming to create something that is strong, totally functional, and looks like it's always been a seamless part of that tooth. This right here is so important, and it's something I really want you to take to heart. Before you pick up a single instrument, you have got to visualize the final result. I mean it. Picture the original shape of that tooth, remember the patient's bite. This mental blueprint is what's going to guide your hands and keep you from making mistakes down the line.
Okay, with that goal firmly in our minds, let's get to work building the foundation of our restoration. This first stage is all about the prep and the pack.
Just follow this 4-step sequence and you'll get a solid pack every time. First, you'll apply your dentin desensitizer. Second, you condense your amalgam and you make sure it's really well adapted into all those little internal corners, the pulpal line angles. Third, and this is a huge one, you have to overpack the cavity by at least 1 millimeter. We do this because the very top layer of amalgam is often a bit rich in mercury and not as strong. Overpacking means that when we start to carve, we're actually carving into the dense, well-condensed amalgam right at our margins. And finally, a quick pre-carve burnish. Don't you dare skip any of these. They are all absolutely vital for a restoration that's going to last.
And here's a pro tip for you when you're doing that final condensation. The pressure needs to be perpendicular to that external enamel surface, right next to your margins. This technique literally drives the amalgam tight against the cavity walls and creates a perfect seal. Trust me, this is your best defense against micro leakage later on. All right, we've gone from packing to shaping. This is the art of carving. This is where your skill, your finesse, and your knowledge of tooth anatomy really come out to play. So here's your basic toolkit. And please, make sure your carvers are sharp. You'll probably start with a bigger discoid cleoid, like a 3/6, for the bulk of the work. Then you can switch to a smaller 4/5 for the finer details. The Hollenbach carver is useful too, but a word of caution, that sharp point can easily dig deep grooves or fossa if you're not careful, and that's a fast track to overcarving. Now listen closely. If you only remember one thing about carving, let it be this golden rule. Some part of your carving blade must always rest on the unprepared tooth surface right next to the margin. This isn't just a suggestion, folks. It is the absolute key to success. And this slide just shows it perfectly. Take a look at the left. See how the blade is resting on the unprepared enamel? You're using the tooth itself as a guide. That's how you get a beautiful, flush, continuous margin. Now, look at the right. Floating the blade without a guide, well, that leads to what we call ditching, or overcarving. You're basically guessing where the margin is, and that creates major weak spots. So we've done the main carving, but we are not done yet. These final touches, this is what separates the good work from the great work. We've got 3 final things to do. First, smooth the surface. You can do this gently with a small damp cotton ball or by doing a post-carve burnish. That'll give you a really nice, smooth satin finish. Second, use your evacuator and get every single last shaving out of the mouth. And finally, you have to check the bite. So when you use that articulating paper to check the bite, this is exactly what you're looking for: uniform markings. The little blue or red marks on your new restoration should be the same size and the same intensity as the marks on the teeth next to it. That tells you the bite is balanced. If the mark on your restoration is way heavier or bigger, you've got a high spot, and you need to reduce it very, very carefully. Okay, let's talk about something critical. This is not just for your clinical work, but it's definitely going to show up on your exams. We're going to identify and learn how to avoid the most common carving mistakes. First up, let's define flash. If you see a thin little ledge of amalgam that's stretching out over the unprepared tooth past the margin, that's flash.
It happens when you undercarve, and that little excess piece is incredibly weak because it has no edge strength. It is absolutely going to fracture off and leave a nasty defect. Now, the opposite mistake is a submarginal defect, or what we sometimes call a ditch. This is what happens when you get a little too aggressive with your carving and you take away too much amalgam. You're left with a gap where the restoration is lower than the cavo-surface margin, that edge of your prep. This is a classic case of over-carving. Memorize this number. Seriously, this number is the threshold for failure, both in the clinic and on your boards. Any submarginal defect, any ditch that is deeper than 0.2 millimeters is clinically unacceptable. End of story. And you need to be able to feel this with the tip of your explorer as you run it from the tooth to the restoration.
And remember this quote for your exams and for your entire career. You can't repair this defect. If you have a submarginal defect that's greater than 0.2 millimeters, the whole thing has to come out. The entire restoration has to be replaced. It's a tough call to make, but it is the only correct one.
So look, we've covered the science, we've covered the steps, we've covered the critical numbers, but the final piece of this whole puzzle is developing the feel for this procedure. That tactile sense, knowing what a perfectly carved margin feels like, that can't be taught in a lecture. It can only be learned through hours and hours of dedicated practice in the sim lab. So take everything you've learned today and go practice the art. I'll see you in the next session.